Translator Nintails. Editor Dark Gem. The act of measuring the height and thickness of the heavens had struck Chinmu and the others like a bolt of lightning cleaving through their spirits. Yet the one who suffered the most crushing blow was none other than Tao Master Lin Xuan. For countless generations, the teachings, techniques, and divine arts of Tao sect had stood upon a single unshakable pillar. Tao follows the nature. The sect sought enlightenment by observing the rhythms of the mountains and rivers, by studying the wind that swept through valleys and the stars that wheeled above the firmament. From these natural patterns, they derived their techniques, forged their divine arts, and shaped the very state of mind required to walk the Tao. And now Tao Master Lin Xuan had discovered that the astronomical phenomena of this world were false. Under such circumstances, how could his heart remain steady? It was only natural that his frame of mind collapsed like a tower built upon sand. If nature itself was counterfeit, then what kind of great Tao could one possibly comprehend by studying it? Tao Master Lin Xuan had been walking forward alone, his robes stirring faintly in the wind, when suddenly his legs lost all strength. With a dull thump, he dropped to his knees upon the ground. His expression froze in stunned disbelief, and the light in his eyes faded until they became empty and unfocused. Several Taoists rushed forward at once to support him, yet before they could lift him up, they heard their Tao master murmuring under his breath, as if speaking to ghosts of the past. The 14th writing of Tao Sword had never once been cultivated successfully. Master spent his entire lifetime pondering it. Only after exhausting every fragment of his talent and scholarship did he come close, yet he still could not cultivate it. His voice trembled faintly. So it was not that he lacked ability, it was that the nature he comprehended was false. If the nature itself was false, how could he possibly succeed in cultivating the 14th writing? Cough, cough. A violent coughing fit seized him, and a thread of blood spilled from the corner of his lips. He was utterly devastated. Tao follows the nature had always been the core doctrine of Tao sect, yet the nature upon which that doctrine rested was nothing but a fabricated illusion. The shock of this realization struck his heart like a thunderbolt, splitting a sacred mountain. Qinmu turned his head toward Xu Shenghua and asked quietly, "Is the sky above your high heavens the same as this sky?" Xu Shenghua lifted his gaze toward the vast dome above them. After observing for a moment, he nodded slowly. The same sky. The same constellations scattered across the night. High heavens was no exception. Qinmu's earlier claim that he was an abandoned person was not false at all. The sky itself was a cage, and whether it was the high heavens or the great ruins, they were all merely birds trapped within that cage, creatures unaware that iron bars surrounded them. Qinmu steadied his mind, forcing the turbulence within his heart to settle like muddy water, clearing after a storm. He walked over to Tao Master Lin Xuan and helped him rise to his feet. Lowering his voice, he spoke calmly. The truth is cold and difficult for people to accept. It would be best not to spread it publicly. Chase after those few Taoists who ran away earlier and prevent them from speaking nonsense. You must preserve at least a fragment of hope for them. Tao Master Lin Xuan raised his head and stared directly into Qinmu's eyes. A strange expression flickered across his face as he asked hoarsely, "Do you think anyone would believe what they say?" Qinmu smiled faintly. "They will believe you. You are asking me to remain silent?" Tao Master Lin Xuan gave a scornful laugh. His voice carried both bitterness and mockery. Our previous Tao masters and countless Taoists devoted their lives to unraveling the 14th writing of Tao Sword. They poured immeasurable effort into studying the nature of heaven and earth, yet the 14th writing stood like an insurmountable peak, an unsolvable riddle that none could conquer. He laughed again, the sound rough and self-derisive. And in the end, it turns out the astronomical phenomena themselves were wrong. Hey, how ridiculous. True fucking ridiculous. Though he stood as the Tao master of a sacred land, the heart within him was still that of a young man. Unable to restrain himself, he spat out several coarse curses. The previous Tao masters of Tao sect did not know where the mistake lay, so they could not cultivate the 14th sword. But now you know. Qinmu spoke slowly, each word deliberate. Perhaps Tao Master Lin Xuan may become the first person to successfully cultivate the 14th sword. Tao Master Lin Xuan's heart trembled. He turned to look at Qinmu. Crisis, Chinmu continued with a gentle smile. Danger always walks hand in hand with opportunity. What we face now is both peril and chance. Ordinary people see only danger, but the wise can perceive the opportunity hidden within that danger, and yet, only those with true ability can seize such an opportunity. His gaze sharpened slightly. Dao Master, what kind of person are you? Dao Master Lin Xuan's chest rose and fell violently. Moments earlier, the revelation that the sky was false had seemed to block the path of Dao sect entirely. Their techniques, their divine arts, their entire understanding of the Dao sword had reached a dead end. But Qinmu's words caused another possibility to appear before him. If the sky they had studied was false, then they must seek the real sky. Only by witnessing the true astronomical order could the 14th writing of Dao sword finally be cultivated. I accept wholeheartedly that you are the human emperor. Dao Master Lin Xuan steadied himself before speaking solemnly. I believe the long dispute between Dao sect and Heavenly Devil cult can finally come to an end. Qinmu nodded. That was my thought as well. We should form an alliance. When our strength grows sufficient, we will pierce through this false sky together. Wang Moran strode forward and extended his palm. Wang Moran of Little Jade Capital is willing to form an alliance with Human Emperor and Dao sect. Qinmu and Dao Master Lin Xuan extended their palms as well. Qinmu then turned toward Xu Shenghua. The young man walked forward calmly and placed his palm with theirs. Xu Shenghua of High Heavens is willing to form an alliance with Human Emperor, Dao sect, and Little Jade Capital. But if we are to form an alliance, should it not have a name? Wang Moran smiled brightly. Why not call it the Heaven Alliance? The three others spoke at the same time. Excellent! Heaven Alliance it shall be! The four withdrew their hands. Dao Master Lin Xuan gave a brief nod toward everyone before leading the experts of Dao sect away. Lord Qin, should we report this to the Emperor? Huo Shanling approached quietly and asked in a low voice. Of course, Qinmu replied. The Emperor must know, but only inform him. Do not spread this matter further, or you may find your head falling from your shoulders. Huo Shanling immediately nodded. Gathering the officials of the Department of Sky Supervision, he hurried away. Wang Moran exhaled shakily. Human Emperor, please forgive me. I must inform Senior Uncle Qing Yu about this. Qinmu nodded. Immortal Qing Yu knows what should be said and what should not. Go ahead and tell him. Senior sister, go find senior brother Long Yu. I will report to senior uncle. Wang Moran said quickly to Mu Qingdai. The two immediately split up. Soon only Qinmu, Xu Shenghua, and Jing Yan remained. Qinmu glanced at Xu Shenghua. Brother Xu seems completely unshaken. Even Dao Master Lin Xuan nearly lost his composure when his beliefs collapsed, yet Brother Xu appears unchanged. I must say, I admire your state of mind. Even I lost my composure earlier. My cultivation of heart is still inferior to yours. Xu Shenghua's expression remained unchanged. I am astonished, he said calmly, and still in shock. I once believed high heaven stood far above the mortal world. I never expected we were trapped in the same cage. That realization is indeed a heavy blow. Qinmu studied his face carefully, but could detect no trace of shock whatsoever. Really? He asked suspiciously. Cult Master Qin, Jingyan said quietly, when my young master is shocked, he usually only shows the slightest frown. Qinmu frowned. And when he is not shocked, he also looks like this. Qinmu was completely speechless. Xu Shenghua raised his head toward the heavens. Brother Qin, he suddenly asked, what do you think lies beyond the sky? I don't know. Qinmu began walking back toward the capital. When we possess the strength, we will go and see for ourselves. Xu Shenghua followed him. The three entered the city. Xu Shenghua and Jing Yan returned to their smithy, while Qinmu headed toward Imperial College. Within Imperial College, numerous algebra masters had already confirmed the spatial algebra model recorded in the Golden Book. Dao sect had made a copy. The palace held another. Hermit Qing Yu had taken one as well, and a final copy remained within Imperial College itself. Naturally, Heavenly Devil Cult also obtained a copy. The establishment of the Golden Book meant that those powerful experts who had been stuck at the Divine Bridge Realm now possessed the possibility of breaking through. This would inevitably produce a vast number of new gods. Of course, not everyone could successfully connect the Divine Bridge. Cultivating the techniques of the Golden Book required extremely high attainments in algebra. If one's mathematical understanding was insufficient, then even possessing the techniques and spatial algebra model of the Golden Book would not allow them to repair the divine bridge. Qinmu returned to his residence. Inside, he saw Hermit Qingyu, village chief, and the others seated with solemn expressions. Wang Muran stood nearby, making it clear that he had already explained everything Qinmu and the others had discovered. I have thought of someone. Village chief lifted his gaze toward the sky, his eyes distant as if recalling an ancient legend. Perhaps he knows some of the truth. Dao friend Qingyu, do you know who I am referring to? I know, Hermit Qingyu replied, his eyes flickering with light. The man who once raised his knives against heaven. Heaven knife. Qinmu blinked in surprise. Grandpa Butcher? Rumor has it that Heaven Knife once raised his blades toward the heavens themselves, Hermit Qingyu explained. Many witnessed that battle. His knife split open the sky, and gods appeared beyond it. He fought those gods until his body fell back into the mortal world. He was known as the most insane martial fanatic alive. If not for that battle, Heaven Knife would never have vanished without a trace. Hermit Qingyu continued thoughtfully. If Heaven Knife had not disappeared, the Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor would never have used the Sword Skill School to defeat the Battle Technique School. He would never have earned the title of Sword God. The god who fought Heaven Knife was not from high heavens, that being descended from outer space. I did not realize it before, but now that we know the truth, Heaven Knife likely understands far more than we do. Not long ago, Heaven Knife and Spear God visited Little Jade Capital as guests. However, they departed the moment they sensed the aura of the gods from high heavens. It is unfortunate. We have no idea where they went afterward. Village Chief pondered silently before speaking again. That madman has most likely gone to seek out the false gods of high heavens. Ever since his waist was reattached, he has remained half-mad. If Blind were not constantly watching over him, who knows what disasters he might have caused. He knows many secrets. We must find him. Muer, let us go search for Butcher. Qinmu hesitated briefly. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor still owes me 100 treasures, and he will soon return to the capital. Village Chief shook his head dismissively. Are the treasures of Roland's Golden Palace worth your attention? The so-called Grandmaster of that palace is nothing more than a rag-and-bone collector. Cripple would not even glance at the trinkets that man gathered across countless lifetimes. Qinmu hesitated for another moment before calling out, Hu Linger! The fox spirit hurried over. Linger, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, owes me 100 treasures. When he returns to the capital, help me collect them. Hu Linger's eyes sparkled instantly. Young master, what treasures? He will bring treasures from Roland's Golden Palace, Qinmu replied. We may select any 100 we desire. Hu Linger was overjoyed, but her excitement soon turned to concern. Young master, my judgment cannot compare with yours. I am afraid I may not choose the best items. I will teach you the Nine Heavens Eyes Awakening skill, Qinmu said. Once your eyes awaken, you will be able to discern the value of treasures. After instructing Hu Linger in the Nine Heavens Eyes Awakening skill, Qinmu awakened the slumbering dragon Qilin. He placed Village Chief upon its back and asked, Village Chief, how shall we locate Grandpa Butcher? Very simple, Village Chief replied calmly. I will release my aura. That will alarm the visitors from high heavens. It will also alert Butcher and Blind. In that way, they will know we are here. The visitors from high heavens will certainly release their own auras to challenge me. When we move toward them, we will naturally find Butcher and Blind. He spoke as though discussing something trivial. Then, he added softly, it is time to settle our debts with the visitors from high heavens. Village Chief was about to release his aura. Suddenly his expression changed. Hermit Qingyu and the other powerful practitioners of Little Jade Capital also turned toward the same direction, their faces filled with astonishment. Qinmu was about to ask what had happened when he too sensed terrifying waves of power pulsing through the air. It is those fellows from high heavens, Village Chief murmured. Strange, I have not even released my aura yet, and they have already exposed their location. He paused suddenly. No, something is wrong. They have begun fighting, Village Chief suddenly shouted. The four sovereigns of high heavens are slaughtering one another. Muer, I will go ahead. Boom! A thunderous explosion erupted from the rocking chair as village chief vanished from the dragon Chilin's back. Moments later, several more tremors rippled through the air. Qingyu, Yu He, and Yu Yun, the three old immortals, had also disappeared. Muran, once Qingdai finds Long Yu, hurry over immediately. Immortal Qingyu's voice echoed faintly from the distance. Translator, Ninetales. Editor, Dark Gem Wang. Muran rode his buck forward and shook his head slowly. These elders truly make people uneasy. Qinmu was startled. Your side as well? Wang Muran nodded. Little Jade Capital has 13 such elders. With the newly arrived old Taoist and old monk, the number has reached 15. Qinmu laughed faintly. My village only has 8.5. Compared to you, I can count myself slightly fortunate. Fortunately, I have senior sister Qingdai and senior brother Long Yu to help share the burden, Wang Muran said. Qinmu's face immediately darkened. In their entire village, he was the only young person. Granny C could also be considered young, of course, yet she had always enjoyed acting like an old crone. The two continued forward at an unhurried pace while waiting for Mu Qingdai to retrieve Long Yu. Not long after, she dragged Long Yu back with her. He looked utterly disheveled. All of his clothing had been removed, and when Mu Qingdai discovered him, he had been running wildly through the capital with nothing but his underpants, dancing and singing as he muttered nonsense to himself. At that moment, Mu Qingdai gave this large senior brother 3 crisp slaps across the face. Long Yu spat out several mouthfuls of congealed blood that had clogged his heart before lowering his head and following her back. Wang Muran allowed the two of them to sit upon the back of the buck. Even though Long Yu was no longer mad, his spirit had clearly collapsed. Qinmu smiled gently. Senior brother Long Yu, what difference is there between knowing and not knowing how high the sky is or how thick the heavens are? The sky remains there regardless of whether you understand it or not. It will always exist. Guard your heart as usual and continue cultivating diligently. When your strength becomes sufficient, simply break through the sky and step beyond it. I understand what the human emperor wishes to say, Long Yu replied sorrowfully, but whenever I think that everything we believed in is false, I cannot stop my fighting spirit from fading. Qinmu understood this feeling well. Not everyone could escape such shadows as swiftly as Tao Master Lin Xuan. The celestial phenomenon had been false, and this matter had struck Tao Master Lin Xuan harder than anyone. Yet Long Yu did not bear the position and responsibility of Tao Master Lin Xuan, so his ability to endure such a shock was naturally somewhat weaker. However, with enough time, Long Yu would eventually step out from those shadows. Since senior brother Long Yu has arrived, let us continue our journey. Wang Muran issued the command, and clouds instantly gathered beneath the hooves of the buck as it rose into the sky and departed. The dragon Qilin immediately followed behind, but the buck cast a disdainful glance backward before increasing its speed. The dragon Qilin was enraged and ran with all its might to keep pace. After racing 100 miles, its breathing became ragged and its eyes rolled back. There's no need for me to lower myself to compete with a dumb buck, right? Cult Master, I'm right, aren't I? We aren't competing in speed, but in endurance. Qinmu acknowledged him with a dark expression. The dragon Qilin slowed down and watched as the buck carried Wang Muran and the others farther and farther away until they vanished into the distance. The dragon Qilin ran for 5,000 miles and became so exhausted that he could barely breathe. He whimpered and asked to rest. So Qinmu allowed him to stop. He lit a fire and prepared food while the dragon Qilin collapsed on the ground and snored loudly. After Qinmu had finished eating and drinking, he called for the dragon Qilin for quite some time before the creature slowly crawled to its feet and unwillingly resumed the journey. They ran from day to night and from night to day, yet they still could not see the buck, nor Wang Muran and the others. That dumb buck's endurance is not bad either, Fatty Dragon said in embarrassment. Qinmu acknowledged him again with a dark expression and tossed him a scarlet fire spirit pill. Your rations for today. The dragon Qilin knew his own incompetence and carefully licked the pill instead of swallowing it whole. After licking it more than a dozen times, he finally finished it. In the end, Qinmu could not bear to be so harsh and took out several more pills for him. The dragon Qilin was overjoyed and swallowed them all immediately. Cult Master, don't worry. I will run with all my strength and definitely catch up to that dumb buck. That buck is not dumb. My dragon Qilin is the dumb one, Qinmu said critically. The dragon Qilin sprinted across the sky. Not long afterward, the lingering melody of a flute drifted through the air. Qinmu looked around in astonishment. The dragon Qilin was running through the air itself, and though his speed could not compare with the buck of Little Jade Capital, it was still extremely swift. Fierce winds howled past them as they moved. For the sound of a flute to reach them under such circumstances, the musician could not be an ordinary person. Just as Qinmu thought this, the dragon Qilin suddenly swayed his head in rhythm with the melody as if drunk. He immediately rushed downward from the skies. The flute's music was exceedingly enchanting. It carried the tone of a folk song that rose high before dipping low, cheerful and lighthearted. The dragon Qilin danced through the sky in delight, hopping here and there with joyful abandon, while his thick tail swept through the air with loud whooshing sounds. Another prolonged note flowed from the flute, and the dragon Qilin charged straight downward into a forest. "Fatty dragon, stop!" Qinmu shouted immediately, yet it was useless. The dragon Qilin seemed completely entranced. He could not hear anything and appeared to have lost all control over his own body as he rushed downward. Qinmu hurriedly leapt into the air and flashed to the front of the dragon Qilin. He pressed both palms onto the dragon Qilin's head and pushed with all his strength while shouting, "Fatty dragon, wake up." He used Buddhist incantations, his voice booming like thunder. Yet the dragon Qilin continued charging forward as if he had heard nothing at all. Qinmu erupted with all his strength, but even so he could not contend against the dragon Qilin's immense power. He was pushed into the forest, and cold sweat began dripping down his forehead as the sound of the flute grew clearer and louder. Turning to look behind him, Qinmu saw a gigantic red flood dragon coiled around a mountain. Its enormous head rested upon the ground. Its mouth gaped wide like a vast cavern, and its teeth were like sharp stalactites dripping with saliva. The flute music originated from the head of the red dragon, where a girl wearing a long dress sat calmly. Although the melody was cheerful, the girl's expression was as cold as ice. Long Jiaonan. Qinmu was startled and hurriedly looked around. The flood dragon should belong to the Dragon King. If it was here with the girl, did that mean the Dragon King himself was also nearby? The flute's melodious tune wound through the air, and the dragon Qilin ran happily toward the open mouth of the flood dragon. A cold light flashed across Qinmu's eyes as Carefree Sword leapt into the air. 8,000 flying swords burst forth instantly and shot toward Long Jiaonan without hesitation. She sneered. The tail of the red flood dragon swept outward, and countless swords clanged against it before bouncing away. Qinmu's heart sank. This flood dragon possessed strength comparable to a cult master-level expert. It was far too powerful. Escaping would be extremely difficult. At that moment, however, an enormous hand suddenly stretched down from the sky. A thunderous voice echoed across the heavens. What luck to encounter a flood dragon simply by descending to the mortal world for a stroll. The massive hand, covered in rough scales, reached down toward the red flood dragon. The creature's expression filled with terror as its body went limp. The dragon Qilin also collapsed onto the ground, not daring to move. Long Jiaonan quickly gathered her vital qi and played the flute more fiercely, but the red flood dragon had already shrunk into itself and refused to move. Long Jiaonan immediately flew upward to evade the hand, yet the hand paid her no attention. It casually grasped the Dragon King's red flood dragon and pulled it into the clouds. The voice in the sky laughed loudly. There's also a dragon of the Qilin breed here, but unfortunately it is too young. I shall return after it grows for a few more years. Descending to the mortal world truly has its rewards. I obtained a flood dragon. Qinmu's mind reeled as he raised his head. Within the clouds stood a gigantic figure flying through the sky while stepping upon 2 flood dragons, one green and one red. 2 yellow flood dragons hung from his ears like ornaments. God! Qinmu shook his head, unable to calm his heart. When he looked again, the green and red flood dragons had already slithered forward through the clouds, carrying the god toward the south. My father's dragon! Long Jiaonan screamed and chased southward frantically. Qinmu suppressed the shock in his heart and raised his hand to summon Carefree Sword. With a thrust, 8,000 flying swords formed a sword cloud that suddenly poured down like rain, covering the entire mountain mound. Long Jiaonan grunted and twisted her body like a giant serpent to dodge the descending sword lights. Yet some were unavoidable and pierced into her body. Long Jiaonan, do you still remember? I once said that if you dared to attack me again, I would no longer show mercy. Qinmu kicked the dragon Qilin awake before rushing forward. Sword lights surged upward like a raging tide as he attacked Long Jiaonan. Her body moved like a spirit serpent with incredible speed, but in the next instant, Qinmu's speed exploded forth. Rising into the air, he charged ahead with the sword cloud. Long Jiaonan hissed repeatedly as she circulated her magic power and unleashed divine arts to confront the sword lights. The dragon Qilin awakened and hurried forward as well. When he roared, the vibrations disturbed Long Jiaonan's senses. Although she was a strong practitioner of Seven Stars realm, she was still lacking when facing the dragon Qilin. Her aura scattered under the roar, and Qinmu immediately seized the opportunity. With his sword fingers stabbing downward, countless flying swords circled around Carefree's sword and merged together, stabbing toward Long Jiaonan like a gigantic treasure sword. Who dares bully my son? Suddenly, a deep and heavy voice rang through the heavens. Qinmu's heart trembled violently. The Dragon King is here! He hurriedly recalled his flying swords and prepared to flee as a dragon-shaped dark cloud rushed toward them at incredible speed. Yet Long Jiaonan raised her head and shouted, "Father, it's the heavenly devil cult master!" Qinmu rushed in front of the dragon Qilin and shouted, "Fatty dragon, I have raised you for 1,000 days so that you can repay me in this moment. Run!" The dragon Qilin was about to unleash his full strength when his four limbs suddenly went numb again, causing him to collapse onto the ground. "Cult master, it's back!" he cried. "What's back?" Qinmu lifted the dragon Qilin with both hands and prepared to flee when the sky darkened once again. A thunderous voice resounded through the clouds. "I still lack a virgin male and a virgin female to tend my dragons. It seems I may conveniently take the two of you." The dragon Qilin went completely limp like a corpse, utterly paralyzed. Only then did Qinmu understand what had returned. The world spun around him as his body involuntarily landed upon a cloud. Long Jiaonan was there as well, equally stunned. "Where did this sorcerer come from? Put my son down!" The voice of the Dragon King echoed from afar as it rapidly approached. Qinmu saw two thick and sturdy legs standing beside him upon the cloud, covered entirely in rough scales. Beneath those legs within the cloud were two flood dragons flying forward, carrying them southward. He lifted his head and saw a giant more than 30 yards tall. His clothes fluttered in the wind, revealing a face covered in scales. His brow ridge was high, and two horns rose from his head. Noisy insect. The god flicked his finger casually. The Dragon King of the Dragon Rider sect was instantly sent flying backward, blood spraying through the air. He crashed into a huge mountain, and his fate became unknown. Virgin male and virgin female. Serve my dragons well. The god lowered his head to look at them within the clouds and grinned, revealing a mouth filled with sharp teeth. Otherwise, I will use you two as toothpicks. Qinmu placed the dragon Qilin down and said bravely, "Senior, my primordial yang has long been discharged, so I am no longer a virgin male." Long Jiaonan immediately spoke as well. "My primordial yin has also long been discharged. I am not a virgin female either." The god sneered. "If that is the case, then there is no need to keep you alive. I shall eat you instead." "I'm a virgin male," Qinmu declared righteously. "But this naughty girl is no longer a virgin female, so may Senior please kill her."